up next, we have the great Vivian talking about what I call spooky voodoo, which is malicious host recruitment over IPv6. So Vivian, welcome. Please take it away.
Hi, so my name is Viv, and I'm a second year PhD student at the University of Glasgow. So I don't have much of an InfoSec background as yet, so this is my first foray into it. My background before this was in the development of transport protocols, so I thought, okay, why don't we take it one layer down and see what we can do there, see if there's any security risks. So there's a very common, we'll start off with something that is actually true. It is impossible to scan the entire IPv6 address space. IPv6 addresses are 128 bits long, so that is this many hosts. If someone wants to tell me how to pronounce that number, I'd be really grateful, because every presentation I've done on this so far, I just point at the screen and go, look, it's big. So that means it's more secure, right? You know, there's no way you're going to just randomly guess one of these billions and billions and billions of addresses. Not exactly. We can perform IPv6 scans. So first of all, let's find out what an IPv6 address actually looks like. What are we looking for? So usually they're big, old, horrible, scary looking things like this. And they can be divided into two halves. The first half, first 64 bits, is the network prefix. So that means, okay, on what network does this device actually live? If we're contacting it through the internet, this is the address that you want to look for, the half of the address you want to look for. The second 64 bits is the interface identifier. So that identifies, okay, that is this host on this particular network prefix. So there's absolutely no point in knocking on a non-existent door. So you want to find network prefixes that actually exist. And that makes your life a whole lot easier instead of iterating through the entire IPv6 address space. So we need to find out where everyone lives. And we can do that using BGP stream. So BGP is Border Gateway Protocol. And these typically take the form of advertisements that look like this. So this is like routing information. So what this is saying is this address is accessible. We want people to be able to reach it. So what /48 on the end means is the first 48 bits of this IPv6 address are already known, they're fixed. You don't need to go and iterate through all those. What we do have is, so to find a live network prefix, we still have 16 bits that we need to look through. And that's a lot more feasible to look through than all 64 bits that we would have to for an interface identifier if we didn't have this advertisement. So the other 64 bits, right on the end, the interface identifier, we don't know those yet, but they're not relevant to us right now for actually finding a live network that might have hosts on it. So effectively, going back to our earlier analogy about finding out where everyone lives, this is us trying to find out, okay, where is a host, where is a house that we can look for residents of? So 2 to the power of 16, we've got just over 65,500 possible hosts that could, possible network prefixes in this advertisement. So an attacker would just iterate through those 16 bits progressively, starting from 0, going all the way up to FFFFFF. Say we were sending ICMPv6 echo requests, so just pinging them, seeing if we get any response whatsoever. If the network does not exist at all, it's not live, or it's not accessible for whatever reason, it will just come back with request timeout. Okay, not very interesting. But say we stumbled across this address at the bottom, 4200, and it came back with a slightly different response saying ICMPv6 destination host unreachable. Okay, normally that's not interpreted as being a good outcome. It's unreachable, I've not got what I wanted. In this case, it tells us that this network prefix exists. It is reachable, but we haven't managed to contact a valid host on it yet. But this is good enough. This means that we've discovered 16 bits that make up the rest of our network prefix. So we have effectively found a house. So we can start finding who actually lives there, which devices are hosted on this network. And that's the remaining 64 bits that we need to find, a 64-bit host identifier. So maybe we should just ask a question. How many bits does it take to screw over a smart light bulb? So say we have Nervous Energy light bulbs. It's got an overcomplicated, buggy IPv6 stack. And the OUI is 10.00.20. Okay, so one of the images has screwed up on this. Apologies, it is supposed to be a light bulb, not a recycle sign. But, you know, we can get past that. So OUI, that's an organizationally unique identifier. So this is the first half of a MAC address, and it will be associated with a particular manufacturer of a network interface card. So all of these are publicly available information. You can find this on the IEEE website. It's not a secret. So that can be made into the first 24 bits of an IPv6 host identifier on certain outdated IPv6 addressing schemes. In order to pad out the, so MAC addresses are 48 bits in length. In order to pad out this to a 64-bit host identifier, you need to add the constant FFFE, that should be in the middle. So all that we've got left that we need to iterate through is an unknown 24 bits at the end, the second half of the MAC address, which is individual to that specific network interface card, the host. So what we need to do is flip bit 7 to the value of 1 to make sure that's, I think it's the universal bit that gets flipped there, but you need to do that to make this into an IPv6 address. So all that we have left to iterate through is 24 bits at the end. We figured out what 104 bits of this address are already with entirely publicly available information, BGP records and organizationally unique identifiers available through IEEE. So the answer, how many bits does it take to screw over a smart light bulb potentially, is 24. So that is just under 17 million possible hosts that would have this OUI on this network. So what we can do is iterate through these 24 bits, as we did before, when we were trying to find the active network prefix. And if we get an ICMPv6 echo reply this time, it means we've hit on a valid host. We've found a device on this network. And that's the IPv6 address I presented at the start. So now that we've found our smart light bulb, what's actually next? What happens next? We can do anything we like. We know where this smart light bulb is, and if we happen to have an exploit that works with this smart light bulb, we can exploit it, do whatever we like to it, and then potentially get information about the rest of the network. So we could call IPv6 IP-6 nay show to get the IPv6 addresses of every single other device on this network. And that's potentially valuable information. If it's a privacy address that we would not have been able to guess randomly, it's just randomly allocated 64 bits, we have that information that we've obtained through the weakest link in the network, the smart light bulb. Okay, that's cool, but why would anyone do this instead of doing an IPv4 scan? So something that's interesting about IPv6 is the addresses don't need to be recycled. The entire reason we have IPv6 is the IPv4 address space is exhausted. There's not enough devices, there's not enough addresses for all of the devices that are internet connected now. So IPv4, I think we've got 4.3 billion IPv4 addresses and well in excess of that number of devices on the internet. So what ISPs will usually do is cycle your IPv4 address. If you're not using an address at that point, they'll assign it to someone else, and this happens very often. IPv6 does not have that requirement. There's more than enough addresses to go around, so why would you cycle it? So I think if there's address persistence, you could potentially build up like some horrible little Argos catalog of addresses about, okay, which kind of device do you want to compromise today? You know, we can give you access to Alexas, we can give you access to smart bulbs, all sorts of things. So you would only have to perform these scans very rarely if addresses did turn out to be persistent. And that's potentially very high value data you could sell for a lot of money. So going back to Ben's talk earlier, it's really captured my imagination, that stuff about hacking smart toilets. So you could cause mass havoc in stuff like smart cities. Like say the person in charge of buying stuff for a smart city was bought into the hype that, okay, IPv6 addresses are 128 bits, that automatically means they're more secure, right? But they decided to go with that insecure addressing scheme based on MAC addresses. You can have a lot of fun getting remote access to traffic lights, causing absolute mayhem with that. You can deny an entire city access to public toilets if they all had smart toilets. You could deny them access to trains, lock them all in stations. Just the possibilities are endless. My personal favorite smart device that I've seen was, this came up, I think it was about a year ago. It was the smart candle that had like a real flame. And there was all these insistences about like, oh no, it's safe. Like we will still need you to use Bluetooth to light this. But they had plans to allow Alexa and Google Home to connect to it and light it from there. So if you manage to compromise one of these Alexa or Google Home devices through its IPv6 address in the little horrible catalog, you could quite easily start fires in people's homes entirely remotely. There was also IPv6 ping of death. There was a CVE that was going around like literally about 2 weeks ago. If someone had access to Windows hosts, here's a collection of IPv6 addresses belonging to Windows hosts. That could have sold to a lot of money to the right person that wanted to exploit this. So why am I scanning IPv6 addresses? For safety. I'm one of the best people to find these IPv6 devices. So if our research team can find devices using scans built using entirely public information, we can inform manufacturers about a potential security flaw before someone does something very, very nasty with this. So ways that you can build resistance to IPv6 scans. Randomised DHCPv6. If you select an address, a host identifier at random, you're back to a 64-bit address space again. So that is that number there. Again, a lot of unpronounceable numbers in this talk, but it's a lot of possible hosts. Either way, if this is randomly selected and there's no patterns that we can exploit to scan, there's not much choice I'm going to find anything, not much chance I'm going to find anything on your network. This is good. Privacy addresses. So most mainstream operating systems will do this by default. They'll assign a privacy address, which if this is done using a secure random number generator and cryptographic algorithm, it's impossible to predict that. So again, we're back to the 64-bit search space. However, if you assign an insecure MAC address based IPv6 address in addition to this privacy address, we can still contact your device. The privacy address might obscure your outgoing traffic, but it will do nothing to protect against your active IPv6 scans if it's assigned in addition to this. So privacy addresses have the additional benefit of whenever you power off your machine, quite a lot of them will assign a completely new privacy address every single time you start up your network interface card again. This is good. Prefix cycling. So you remember the first 64 bits of an IPv6 address were the network identifier. If you manage to cycle this every so often, so people can't keep a persistent catalog of IPv6 addresses that happen to have a vulnerable device on it, this makes IPv6 scans a lot more difficult to, it means that IPv6 scans would need to be performed a lot more often. And people just would not want to invest that amount of work if they were doing anything malicious with it. So prefix cycling would do a lot to disincentivize the economic reasons to perform IPv6 scans. So the next steps in this research. This has all been quite theoretical so far, what we've built up from past research papers, internet standards documents, other things like that. So what we want to do is put it into practice and see how many IoT devices actually have global IPv6 addresses they're the most likely to use this insecure addressing scheme. And can we attempt to locate them using an internet-wide scan in the wild? Like, does this actually work in practice as well as on paper? So we're currently writing up an experimental plan for this. We also want to establish patterns in address allocations. So, for example, domestic ISPs, like the last ISP I was with, allocated /56 IPv6 address ranges to their customers. This is a very trivial search space. So if we were searching for a network that was live, we would have 256 possibilities to search per 56 advertisements. That's trivial. You can do that in under a second. So what we also want to see is, do domestic ISPs allocate IPv6 address ranges to customers sequentially? For example, like does customer one get /56, 01 at the start of that, and then the second customer gets 02, and so on and so on. Are there other patterns that we can exploit to make our life even easier for these scans? We also want to actually, clean up the mess we've created. Like, okay, we found all these devices, that's cool. But what we need to do is responsibly disclose these relevant findings to the device manufacturers to fix potential identified risks before someone can actually exploit it in practice. IPv6 scanning, it's quite it's one of these things. It's not a risk at the moment. It's just too impractical. It's not high risk at the moment. It's quite impractical. You need a lot of knowledge to pull it off. But 10, 20, 30 years down the line, when we have even more devices on the internet, IPv6 adoption becomes even more common, this might become a big risk. So if we can start fixing that now, when we've still got several years to work on it, this is good. So, the conclusion. IPv6 is a force for good, despite everything that I've said to you. The only negative I would say is don't assume that IPv6 is automatically more secure or that it's or that it's impossible to scan. However, if you manage IPv6 well, you'll benefit from end-to-end connectivity, so you don't need to start wrestling with NATs or address translation or anything like that. And you'll also benefit from resistance to scanning. So IPv4 scans, absolutely trivial to do. If you exclusively use IPv6 addressing and you do it well using cycle prefixes, DHCPv6, privacy addresses, if you use all of that well, you will have a lot more resistance to scanning than if you just stuck with IPv4 or badly managed IPv6. It's worth looking into. And that's it. So any questions would be great. And I'd just like to say a big thanks to everyone involved with this event, and huge thanks to the beer farmers for giving me the space to speak. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was awesome. I know I give you a lot of hassle over IPv6 and say it's spooky voodoo and all that nonsense. It doesn't need to be spooky. It doesn't. No, you're right.
No.
That's genuinely the first time I've listened to or watched or heard some IPv6 stuff and not been bored dramatically. It's so daunting. It's really approachable how you've presented it, even to an idiot like me. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
There is a couple of questions from the audience. I'm just adding them to the list just in case we don't have time. Mm-hmm. But Tim has asked, take-up has been slow. When do you think IPv6 will start to become more common?
So we are seeing increased uptake of it now. So what I would say is IPv6, it has been around since the 90s. This is not a new protocol by any means. But we are seeing, I think, the rise of sort of huge companies like Google and Facebook and all that sort of thing, whatever the politics we disagree with on that, they do tend to influence a lot of trends and things. So, there's like Quick. I don't know if anyone has much experience with that, but Quick, it's a reasonably new protocol, but it's already seeing huge adoption from a lot of companies because, it's sponsored by Google. This must be good. I think the fact that Google and Facebook and Akamai and all that sort of thing are taking up IPv6 and taking it quite seriously, I think it might inspire a lot of other people to get onto it as well about, this is a trendy thing, you should get onto it. Which is why I'm a bit hesitant about people sort of adopting this without knowing what they're doing. If you adopt insecure addressing schemes like the one that's vulnerable to our scan that we're building, you've made yourself a little bit more secure, but it's not, the silver bullet that people portray it to be. So, sorry, the original question was, how do I see adoption?
Yeah, but basically take-up has been slow. When do you think it will be?
I think it's accelerating. Like, I don't want to give any hard numbers because I don't have that information to hand, but I think we will be seeing a lot more of it in the future, especially with IoT devices coming in, smart cities and things. Yeah.
I agree. I think that's going to really, really push it forward. Ian, I believe you have some comments and thoughts.
Yeah, so Vivian probably knows better than I do, but I heard a stat a couple of years ago about that security at your perimeter can be greatly enhanced by actually using only IPv6 internally and translating IPv6 to IPv4 when you actually end up going on the internet to do like web serving and using other protocols. Do you have any thoughts around that?
To be honest with you, that's a new one on me, but I've not, I guess this just shows I've not worked in production environments. I think people are a lot more familiar with configuring IPv4 firewalls and all that sort of thing. It's very easy to misconfigure IPv6.
The idea being is that because the malware isn't aware of IPv6 and can't make callouts to C2, that there's some sort of defense. Have you kind of explored that?
No, but I'd love to talk over that later. It sounds really interesting.
Sounds great.
Awesome. Thank you.
So I had a question. We battle now with tooling and resources, or more tooling around security tools and monitors and that around IPv4. How do we tackle, or what are your thoughts on how we try to avoid those similar things? Because I imagine it's only going to get worse with IPv6. So are there things that we can do and plan to help ensure that we don't suffer some of the same sort of issues that we do today?
I think honestly, the advice about just making sure that you select addresses in a way that are not predictable, I think would help protect against the active scans that I was talking about. Obviously, if you've got someone that's clicked on a phishing email and on a mainstream desktop using a mainstream OS. Like, it's trivial to make calls about, okay, these are the IPv6 hosts on that network. So obviously, you know, the standard stuff about like, don't go clicking on anything shifty, you know, IPv6 is not a panacea for that sort of thing. And I think this is what I'm a wee bit worried about, is people keep thinking, oh, IPv6, you know, it's automatically more secure. Not necessarily. Were there any examples you had in mind? Sorry, I'm not overly familiar. You're on mute.
It was just a more general comment. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
You answered it spot on.
I've got one little quick point to make around the IPv4 space remaining. It is limited, and we hear about it all the time. I work for a company that owns, globally, not a large amount of IPv4 space, but we are seeing it, and we are seeing customers come to us to buy IPv4 space from us because they're aware that it's still easily digestible and computable in their infrastructure. And we're also seeing governments coming to our organization and saying, can we have 50K IPv4 addresses, please? You know,
Really?
So it's becoming a marketplace.
Oh, they're like gold dust, yeah, but I wasn't aware governments were buying it as well.
Yeah, realistically, we are seeing a sales opportunity on IPv4. So,
oh, for sure,
yeah, absolutely.
So I think all of the regional internet registries have completely run out of IPv4 addresses. You know, the last one to run out was Afrinic, and that was relatively recently, but yep, cleared out. Valuable resource. Cool.
Cool. Listen, thanks. The feed. I don't know what happened there. I think Mike was just satisfied with the response. No, but the feedback has been amazing, and Twitch is going nuts. Awesome talk. You know, thanks very much. Thank you. Great talk. I should really IPv6 more.
Yes. Awesome. Okay.
Yeah, no, genuinely, you've converted me. I gave you a lot of stick for it before. I get it.
And you will
now.
continue to, I imagine.
Yeah, I will still give you stick for it, to be fair, but I get it. I'm a dinosaur and I'm an idiot, but you've made it more accessible to me, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. But yeah, if that's everything, I'll pass you to Sean.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Excellent talk, and look forward to seeing where IPv6 goes. I certainly learned a lot out of this talk. Before it was like all magic glittering with a bunch of numbers along it. I've always been wanting to learn a bit more about it. It's like one of those things that you always put off. So excellent.
Not as daunting as you would think. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think this has been about half a year I've been studying this. It's not been long. Yeah.
So yeah, put it in really easy to understand terms. So awesome work there. Great.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you.